translated by Donald Rayfield. Chapter: A Personal Quota. One evening the guard said, as he rolled up his tape measure, that Hugo F. would be getting a personal quota for the next day. The foreman, who was standing next to them and had been asking the guard to credit them with 12 cubic meters until the day after tomorrow, suddenly fell silent and moved his gaze to the evening star, which was glimmering over the crest of the bare hill. Baranov, who was Hugo F.'s work partner and had been helping the guard to measure the work they had done, picked up his spade and set to clearing the pit face, which had been cleaned out long ago anyway. Hugo F. was 23 years old and was more amazed than frightened by everything he had seen and heard here. The brigade gathered for roll call, handed in their tools, and, in the prisoners' typical straggling line, went back to their barracks. A hard day's labor was over. Hugo F. didn't sit down in the refectory, he drank the thin cold barley soup straight out of the bowl. His day's ration of bread, issued in the morning, had since been eaten. He longed to smoke. He looked around, working out whom he could beg a cigarette end from. Baranov was by the windowsill, scraping into a piece of paper tobacco dust left after someone had emptied their tobacco pouch. After carefully gathering the tobacco, Baranov rolled a thin cigarette and passed it to Hugo F. "Have a smoke and leave some for me," he offered. Hugo F. was amazed, for he and Baranov weren't friends. Not that any friendship could arise between hungry, cold, and sleepless men. Hugo F., despite his youth, understood how false were all the proverbs about friendship tested by misfortune and misery. Real friendship needed to have firm foundations laid before the conditions of everyday life had reached the extreme point beyond which human beings have nothing human about them except mistrust, anger, and lies. Hugo F. never forgot the saying in the North, that there are 3 commandments for prisoners: don't trust, don't be afraid, don't ask. Hugo F. greedily sucked in the sweet tobacco smoke. His head began to spin. "I'm getting weak," he said. Baranov did not reply. Hugo F. went back to the barracks, lay down, and shut his eyes. Recently he had not been sleeping well. Hunger stopped him from sleeping properly. He had particularly upsetting dreams, loaves of bread, rich steaming soups. It took a long time for oblivion to come, and still Hugo F.'s eyes were open half an hour before reveille. The brigade reached its workplace, everyone went to their pit face. "You wait here," the foreman told Hugo F. "The guard will tell you where to go." Hugo F. sat down on the ground. He was already so worn out that he was completely indifferent to any change in his fate. The first wheelbarrows came thundering down the ramp, spades rasped noisily as they struck stone. "Come here," the guard ordered Hugo F. "This is your place." He marked out a cubic measure of the pit face and designated a piece of quartz as the boundary. "Up to here," he said. "The ramp man will give you a board to join the main ramp. You have to barrow it to the same place as everybody else. Here's your spade, pickaxe, crowbar, barrow, get a move on." Hugo F. meekly set to work. This is even better, he thought. None of his fellow workers would be grumbling that he wasn't doing his job. People who had once worked the land had no need to understand or know that Hugo F. was new to the work, that he had gone straight from school to university, and then from the lecture room straight to this pit face. Everyone was on their own. They didn't want or need to know that he had long been exhausted and starved, that he didn't know how to steal. Knowing how to steal is the main virtue in the North and takes many forms. beginning with stealing your workmates' bread and ending by defrauding the bosses of thousands of rubles in bonuses for non-existent and impossible production achievements. Nobody cared if Dugaf couldn't stand a 16-hour working day. Dugaf barrowed, pickaxed, filled his barrow, barrowed again, and pickaxed and filled again. After the lunch interval the guard came to look at what Dugaf had done and then left without saying a word. Dugaf pickaxed and filled his barrow again. The quartz marker was still a long way away. In the evening the guard reappeared and unwound his tape measure. He measured what Dugaf had done. 25%, he said, and then gave Dugaf a look. 25%. Are you listening? I am, said Dugaf. He was astonished by this figure. The work was so hard, the spade budged so little stone, and it was so difficult to use the pickaxe. Even the figure of 25% of the norm seemed to Dugaf to be very high. His calves ached, his arms, shoulders, and head hurt unbearably from constantly pushing the barrow. He had long ago stopped feeling hungry. Dugaf ate because he saw other people eating and something told him that he had to eat. But he didn't want to. Right then, said the guard as he left. Good luck to you. That evening Dugaf was summoned to see the interrogator. He replied to the 4 questions: first name, surname, criminal code article, sentence. The 4 questions a prisoner can be asked 30 times a day. Then Dugaf went off to sleep. The next day he was again working with the rest of the brigade, but the following night he was taken by soldiers behind the stables and then led along a forest path to a place where a tall fence, topped with barbed wire, cordoned off most of a small ravine. At nights you could hear from this point the rumbling of tractors. Dugaf realized what was about to happen. He wished he hadn't wasted his time working and suffering all this day, his last.